Hi everyone, in this video I want to have a quick look at how I can run a linear regression using EViews. Now EViews is a proprietary software, but UEL happens to have the license for it across all of our campuses, so you can pick EViews up via the software centre if your PC doesn't have it installed already. But as I say, it's not open source, so this isn't one that you're going to be able to use at home unless you have a bit of money to spend. And to be quite frank, I think there are better things to spend money on than econometrics packages. Okay, first thing I need to do is get my data file prepared in Microsoft Excel. Ideally, I have all of my labels contained in the top row. The data frame starts in A1, so no empty space to the top or to the left. If I've got dates in the file, so if it's time series data, ideally I want the format of these cells or this variable to be date in MS Excel, because that makes it easier to get the data into EViews. At this stage, I've just had a cursory look through. I'm not worried about blanks, and I understand what variables I've got. Before I go into EViews, I usually make the habit of trying to work out what regression I'm going to run, because remember, in regression, it does matter which way around you run the variables. Now, what I think we can look at here is to what extent does the Standard & Poor index return translate into the returns for an individual equity, in this case, Dell. And this is somewhat logical because Dell is one of the constituent members of the S&P 500 index. So what we want to see here is to what extent does a change in the overall index reflect in the equity price or equity return of an individual share, that is Dell. So in this case, I'm going to use the S&P return as the explanatory variable, that's the X variable, and I'll use Dell as the explained variable or the Y variable. Now, I'm done in Excel, so I'll save that somewhere locally on my PC, and I can go into EViews. Now, here's one I've prepared earlier. Sometimes EViews starts with a pop-up box to get you started. I don't have it in this case, but that's not a problem. So I'm going to come up to File, then I go Open, and Open Data, Foreign Data as Work File. If I open that up, I can now pick up that Excel file and I can bring it into EViews. Now, I happen to know that's the file that I've already saved. Now I get the read-in wizard. 9 times out of 10, you can just hit next 3 times and then hit finish, but for the sake of the video, we're going to do it properly. So the first thing I need to check is that it's identified the column labels correctly and that this does look like it did in Excel, albeit with a good deal more decimal points. That's okay. If I need to assist it to identify the row names, that's okay. If I need to skip something, that's where I can do it. I don't have any blanks in the data. If I did have blanks, I would put the blank identifier in here, so all good. It is very good also to make sure that any date series you have in time series is date and not character. Then I go to the last step. If I've got dated time series, just make sure that EViews has picked that up. If I've got cross-section, it should auto-identify that it's unstructured. In very exceptional cases, I may well have panel data, but that's a very specialist thing, and we'll cross that bridge if we get there. All 4 steps look good to me, so I'm going to smash finish. And now I've got an EViews work file. What I'll do now is I'll run the regression, then we can look at how I can capture the results and save it. Okay, there are a few ways you can use EViews. It does have a syntax pain, but most users of EViews, at the more basic end at least, don't use syntax command. They use the functionality in the top ribbon because it's far, far easier to click than type. So let's do it the easy way, because who wants to have a hard life? Go quick, then hit estimate equation. You'll get a pop-up box. Now, at this point, I have to remember what hypothesis I came up with some moments ago. So I wanted to use del return as the explained variable. So I typed the y variable first, and I can see on the left the name of it. EViews always replaces spaces with an underscore. That's fine. I can use the autocomplete because it's not tolerant of typos. Now I hit space. The next thing I need to add in my regression model is the constant, or the alpha term. You don't type alpha, you just use the lowercase letter c, then a space. So this tells EViews, this is my y variable. I want you to include an intercept. Now I need to tell it what x variable, or x variables, because you can have multiple, I want to use. In this case, it's just the standard and poor return. I can see what it's called in my data file. So I'll start typing. I'll let the autocomplete take over because I don't trust myself. At this point, just make sure you've got least squares set to the method. And if it all looks good, hit OK. I've now got an estimation output. And if I want to save this, what I first need to do is hit name. Once I hit name, I can give this a name other than the default if I wish to, and I can hit OK. You'll now see I've got an object in the work file. So once I save the work file, I can retrieve this regression output just by clicking beta. So if I close it, click beta, I've got it straight back. And everything you get in Excel, plus a bit more, you get in EViews. The format is just different. So that's the coefficient of the intercept. This one is the coefficient of the x variable. I've got my t-statistics, I've got my p-values. R-square and adjusted R-square, I've got my f-stat down here. If I'm worried about autocorrelation, I've got my Durbin-Watson statistic down here. I'm going to try and keep this video basic, but if you are looking for some other hypothesis tests, so for instance you want to do the white test for heteroscedicity, you come up to view, then you'll get most of what you need under residual diagnostics. But let's not go there in a simple video. Maybe we make another video if we get enough likes and subscribes for this one. That gets me the output. You can copy and paste the whole thing into a Word document if you wish. You may want to find a neater way to present this. It's certainly not professional to copy and paste the whole lot, but it's highly doable. And you can now go File, Save As, and you can create an EViews work file and just save this somewhere onto your local drive. And that way, providing I've named my items, saved my work file, I can close this, walk away, and I can retrieve it at a later point. If you do happen to be one of my own students, I would like you to submit a copy of your EViews work files along with your coursework, just so I can quickly peruse them at a later point. So you will need to save it so that you can provide it to me. I'm not going to go any further here. There's a lot more you can do in EViews, but that's the first couple of steps, and hopefully that's a useful nudge in the right direction.